There is something almost unreal about the way fire and stone guided survival during World War II. People tend to picture steel, engines and factory smoke when they think of that war, but tucked in the cracks of that chaos was a method that feels more like something from an older age. It sounds almost too simple at first. A warm stone pulled from a fire or heated in a field stove. Yet this tiny thing helped soldiers keep going when the cold tried to shut them down. That might seem small at a glance. It was not. It sat at the centre of nights, where frost bit through coats, and breath turned into clouds that drifted like fading smoke. This method carried more weight than many modern warmers people rely on today. Before we continue, subscribe to my channel for more mind-blowing facts on the wonders of the ancient world. To understand why this odd little trick mattered, you have to picture the timeline. By the late 1930s and early 40s, armies fought across regions that felt more like frozen frontiers than battlefields. Troops crossed mountains, forests, plains that turned into sheets of ice, and trenches that locked in cold air like a trap. Soldiers needed anything that kept their hands from stiffening, their feet from going numb, and their bodies from slipping into the kind of cold that turns judgment slow. Supplies ran thin. Fuel ran low. Batteries died faster than anyone expected. Simple stones pulled from a campfire or a portable stove became tools that kept fingers warm enough to hold rifles and write letters and keep moving when the winter pushed hard. This trick was cheap. It used whatever the land already had, and it did not fail when modern gear stopped working. The heart of this method rested on the idea that a stone keeps heat far longer than most people guess. Soldiers heated stones until they reached a steady warmth, then wrapped them in cloth. A stone warmed at dusk could stay useful deep into the night. When someone held it against their chest, or tucked it under an arm, or placed it inside a coat, the heat spread slowly and evenly. You could call it a small comfort, but comfort in war is never small. A warmed stone in a sleeping bag could mean the difference between waking up stiff and waking up able to march at first light. This tiny method held an edge over modern warmers because it did not rely on chemicals or boxes or anything that needed replacement. A stone was always close at hand. Fire was always possible in some form, even if small. And once heated, the stone stayed loyal longer than many newer options. Think about the scale for a moment. A modern pocket warmer might last a handful of hours. A well-heated stone could stretch warmth across an entire night, depending on its size. A larger stone meant more stored heat, so troops used everything from palm-sized river stones to heavy pieces of broken masonry. If you ever held a stone that soaked in sunlight all afternoon, you know how long that warmth clings. Now imagine a line of soldiers, each with a heated stone tucked close, moving through a pitch-black winter field. It sounds almost primal, but it worked. This method also pulled its strength from adaptation. Soldiers learned fast. They tested which stones cracked when heated and which ones held steady. They figured out that river stones lasted longer than porous ones. They wrapped the stones in shirts, socks, even pieces of old uniforms. They tucked them inside boots before putting them on, so the leather stayed soft rather than stiff. They warmed food tins with the same stones. The whole idea of survival often came down to small adjustments like this. Nothing fancy, just clever choices made under pressure. Some units relied on stones because their heating gear failed in the cold. Chemical warmers sometimes froze before they activated. Field stoves sputtered. But a stone had none of those issues. Once heated, it held its temper, even in snow. A few soldiers mentioned that they kept 2 stones instead of 1, rotating them near the fire through the evening. When one cooled, the other took its place. This little cycle became part of their nightly rhythm. It felt steady, almost comforting, in a setting that offered almost nothing steady. As the war grew and stretched into more brutal winters, this method stood firm. It did not need supply chains, it did not need maintenance. It used something the earth offered for free. That mattered. Armies often talk about rations and ammunition and fuel, but warmth plays its own part in survival. A soldier slowed by cold becomes easier to target. A soldier who cannot feel their fingers fumbles at the worst times. Heat kept reaction sharp. It kept people awake when exhaustion pressed in. It prevented injuries tied to freezing. A simple stone, warm in a pocket, carried more influence than its size suggested. Modern warmers feel convenient, and sure, they work well in normal conditions. But compare the dependability. A modern warmer fades. It burns through its charge or its chemicals. A stone has no such weakness. Heat it again and again. No limits. The old method wins in the long run. That is why some outdoor survival groups still teach it today. Not because it is charming or nostalgic, because it is reliable. In an emergency, the difference between reusable heat and disposable heat matters. A stone does not fail. It waits for you. There is something grounding about the idea that people at war leaned on this small piece of knowledge from older generations. Grandparents used warm stones to ease aches or warm beds before sleep. Soldiers carried that same idea into foxholes and snow-covered shelters. The moment feels almost human in the middle of something harsh. Cold does not care about sides. It presses on everyone the same way. A warm stone gave a moment of relief that cut through that cold. It helped people sleep, focus, breathe a little easier. You can almost imagine the glow of a tiny fire, the scrape of metal cups, the soft clink of stones being placed near the heat. A simple ritual before another difficult day. In the end, the hidden hot stone method survived because it did not break. It did not fail in storms or run out in freezing nights. It followed soldiers wherever they went. This quiet piece of knowledge carried more strength than many tools that appeared more advanced. It stands as a reminder that the oldest solutions often outlast the modern ones. If that stirred something in you, tap the like button, subscribe, and pass this along to someone who thinks modern gear always wins. Because sometimes the strongest survivor is the quiet idea that kept people warm when nothing else would.